Well, this is a bit of an intriguing engine. I spotted this on eBay and I was, got my interest perked. I'm going to call it a scratch built overtype because what I think it is I think it's a bit of a bitzer. The firebox and boiler, I believe, are scratch built. And certainly when you look inside the firebox, this is obviously cut off of some sort of like an oil can or something. The tin plate that the firebox is made from. But I believe that the engine here, I think this is probably commercial, possibly off of a German-made model steam engine. Certainly looking at it, it has all the hallmarks of being a German manufactured. So yes, I think the engine frame, the flywheel, cylinder, I think it's all, and piston and eccentric rod strap are all commercially made. So it's some and some. But yeah, it's intriguing. It's got a very nice hardwood base. And it needs cleaning up. The steam pipe is also interesting. The steam pipe S is around under the boiler, so it's got a sort of type of soup heater effect. This pipe here has become detached from the cylinder, so we need to sort that out. But I'm going to strip it down and give it all good clean. But yeah, it's just something a little bit unusual, and it caught my eye, and I thought, well, why not? I think the boiler's copper actually, so that's going to clean up really nice to get the paint off of it. So yeah, looking forward to hopefully getting this one running in the not too distant future. Well, as you can see, I've done quite a bit of work on that large scratch built overtype. I didn't bother filming the cleaning up process this time because I've done it many times in my videos and it's exactly the same thing, and I did it fairly recently in the Swan M1 video. So there was almost no rust removal involved in this. It was all paint removal, so just my usual oven mate paint stripper, which did a real good job on the flywheel and the engine frame. And on the boiler, it took all that green paint off the boiler. The firebox was a bit harder a job, but we got there in the end, and basically it was paint stripper and wire wheel work. But it's revealed a few interesting things. Let's have a quick look at the end of the boiler. Now, I don't know whether you can see that, how well that's going to show up, but one of the patches that they put over, these were probably fittings on the end of the boiler. That's an old UK halfpenny, 1972 or 74, I think. I remember if I checked the date, so quite interesting use for a patch. And the other thing was, in the first part of the video, I said that I thought that the frame and the flywheel and cylinder, piston and everything was possibly German in origin. And when I was cleaning it up, again, I don't know how well this is going to come out on the camera. Bring it in close. But there are 3 letters on the slide valve just there, D.R.P. which stands for Deutscher Reich Patent, which is a patent mark which is put on things made in Germany up until around about 1945. So it probably is all of this and the frame and the flywheel are probably off of a German-made engine. Almost certainly now. Well, we know the slide valve definitely is. So yeah, it's definitely part homemade and part commercial. This, I think, was supposed to be the safety valve, and which I've now made a safety valve. Basically, this end was blocked up with a lump of solder, and there was nothing in it. But I think that this was the safety valve. So basically, I've turned it into a safety valve, certainly by making the middle bit, so that is now sprung, and that will act quite nicely as the safety valve. So yeah, I think we're about ready to put it back together. Yeah, I think we are. Well, it's finally done, and what an absolute nightmare. Nothing on this engine is even remotely straight. Everything is cocked or bent, or it's just terrible. But then again, as I said before, I'm fairly certain the whole engine frame, all of this, is off of another engine, a commercially made German engine, probably maybe turn of the century, something like that, early 1900s. The boiler and the firebox and the steam pipe are all scratch built. I'm fairly certain that's the case. But yeah, it's back together, but I'm not even remotely happy with it. You get one part of it straight, and then something else doesn't line up, and yeah, it is a right pain. But yeah, I am gonna try and run this on air, because I had to do quite a lot to it to even get it, you know, to go back together in some semblance of, you know, with everything turning freely. So yeah, we will attempt to run this on air before we try and steam it. Well, as you can see, it's connected up to my little air compressor. So we are going to have a go at seeing if we can get it to run on air. Well, it's running, but it's taking quite a lot of pressure to actually run. As you can see, we've got a wobble on the flywheel. Yeah. Definitely going to need a bit of fettling, I think. Well, it is running, but it's not quite right. So we need to have a fiddle around before we try and steam it. Well, it's about 2 days later, and I've had this engine completely stripped down. It was definitely not running right, and there was something seriously wrong. So I had it all stripped down. And basically what I did was I had the engine, the cylinder, the valve block and slide valve off completely of the engine, and I connected the airline up to the inlet pipe and then manually operated the slide valve. And basically this is a double acting cylinder, but what it was actually doing, it was only really working in one direction. So you move the slide valve one way and the piston would shoot out, which is what it's supposed to do. Move it in the other way and it was supposed to shoot back in again, but what happened was it would just move in slowly. So there was obviously some sort of blockage in the valve block area. So I took all this off. I removed the front end cap, which allowed me to pull the piston out, and then I unsoldered the cylinder from the valve block. And that was where the trouble was. The valve block has two small grooves machined into it, which transfer steam from the ports on the valve block to the ports on the cylinder. The ports on the cylinder are at either end of the cylinder, sort of like here, and then there's a groove in the valve block face which goes towards the port which is in the valve block. And one of them, which is, I think it was this one at this end, was blocked, partially blocked with solder. So I had to clean all the old solder off, which basically involves heating the block up and then using a brush to brush as much of the old solder off as possible, which worked out quite well. And then obviously solder it back into place. Now, a little tip I picked up from Keith Appleton's YouTube channel. Keith is a prolific steam engine guy, and that is this stuff, Friolux solder paint. It's basically a mixture of solder and flux to give you a sort of thick paint consistency. And this is ideal where you only need a very small amount of solder. So you can basically brush that on very, very thinly over the areas where you need it, put the two parts together and heat them up, and then they solder themselves together. But like I said, you've got to only use a very small amount of solder on the joint between the cylinder and the valve block, because otherwise you will fill up the grooves which supply it with steam. So yeah, that's done, and I have tested it. I'm going to run it again for you on camera now, and it now runs an awful lot better. There are a few other things I did. I've tried to straighten out the flywheel a bit. and this whole motion here was binding. So I disconnected the conrod. Actually, first of all, I disconnected the conrod and to see whether it was the eccentric strap, and it wasn't. That was absolutely free. So then I disconnected the eccentric strap and just reconnected the conrod, and basically the conrod was binding in a certain position, and it's simply because it was bent. Like I said earlier, pretty much everything on this engine was bent. So, you know, so that took a lot of tweaking to get that to the point where it wasn't binding. But anyway, it's all a lot better now, so we'll connect the air up and give it a run. So that's quite low pressure that that's running on. I'll increase the pressure a bit. And as you can see, that's now running much faster. Slow it down a bit. It will now run on quite low pressure, which it wouldn't do before. So, let's give it a go on steam. Yeah, that's much better than it was before. It's actually operating properly now. So I'm not using its meth burner. I've got the small horizontal Bix gas burner in there. Hopefully that will provide enough steam. I don't think it's going to need much. It certainly didn't need much air pressure, so we'll let it build up some pressure and then we'll come back. Well, I think we might be about ready. Yeah, we got a bit of a steam leak from the safety valve. That obviously needs to be tightened up. No, it's not quite enough pressure there. Let's give it a bit of help. See whether it's just a lack of pressure, which I suspect it is. Yeah, there we go, look at that. Just a lack of pressure. The little tiny Bix burner is very small. It's just not man enough for this size of boiler. There we go, look at that, lovely. Well, we got there in the end. Even if it does need a bit of help from the gas torch. It's running quite nicely now, actually. Doing a little bit of work on the crankshaft and the flywheel definitely helped smooth things out a bit. I'll change the camera angle. It's a little bit difficult to turn the thing around because of the gas cylinder. And it now does appear to be running just on the burner. Amazing. Here's the extra. I say that and it stops. Yeah, typical. Well, not too bad at all. It was a lot of hard work, this bloody thing, but we got there in the end. Yeah, I'm pleased about that. Just shows you though that, you know, sometimes you just really do need to strip the things right down to next to nothing. Otherwise you just don't get anywhere with it. The boiler's got massive capacity. I put half a litre in there and it wasn't even remotely full. So we're not in danger of running out of water. Well, there you go. That's that large scratch built Overtype. As I said, all of this bit I think is German manufactured, sometime before 1945, but the rest of it's all scratch built. So yeah, a lot of hard work, but it was worth it in the end. It's quite a nice engine when it's running. So sometimes it will run fine just on the Bix burner, and then other times it just runs out of puff. It would help if I could, if I tighten up the safety valve. That's definitely leaking some steam, which was waste. Okay, so there you go. This rather large scratch built Overtype is now running. Hope you've enjoyed the video. As always, thanks very much for watching. Cheers!